You know those things that bug me sometimes and I do videos about it? Here we are again. I'm wearing a Rick and Morty shirt and I'm wearing a Lion King shirt. For some reason, Yvonne thought this shirt before she made it might speak to me. I don't know why she'd think that. I kind of wish I'd had this at my old workplace. I had some very highly inappropriate shirts for my workplace, and I couldn't wear them. That made some statements about how I felt about being around people and some of the people I had to be around. This one would have been better received, and I could have worn it at work. I could have said, big joke. Anyways, I want to talk a little bit about fatigue. And they were talking about it today on Aftermath. The show that proves that wrestling is taken more seriously in Canada than in the States. And I have to say, too, yeah, this hat is a cat hair attractor. I have to throw that in there. Some hats are. Anyways, there's 3 hours of Raw, there's 2 hours of SmackDown, there's an hour of NXT, there's an hour of 205 Live, and then you have pay-per-views that can go for 4 or 5 hours. There's too much content. Now, on top of that, they have the Super Super, the Evolution, the women's, they've got this buried. They wanted to do this women's pay-per-view. It's bloody buried. Then you've got the We Hate Women Super Show in Saudi Arabia. And then you've got, and I'm starting to think those two things are connected. That WWE got some flack for the fact that women can't wrestle in Saudi Arabia. And can't. And so they've given the women their own pay-per-view right before the next show in Saudi Arabia. And then 2 weeks after the show in Saudi Arabia, there's going to be a Survivor Series. And then you factor in that rumor has it that Shawn Michaels will come out of retirement to wrestle in a tag match with Hunter against The Undertaker and Kane. And now, here's the problem I have. Now, I'm as big an Undertaker fan as anybody's, but it's over. And what I find weird is, and again, this is me speaking as a guy who's watched wrestling forever. Going back to the 80s, when you had a veteran guy coming out who hadn't wrestled in 4 or 5 years, they were never portrayed as being a legit threat to the wrestlers who were currently on the roster. They would do the job, as it were. Look at Chris Jericho against all the legends as an example. And that wasn't that long ago. And that showed us that Ricky Steamboat still had it, and Steamboat went out and did a few matches and some fun stuff, but his time had passed. It feels like the Attitude Generation, not part of that. And I put this on Vince. I put this on Vince that he looks at the Attitude Generation and says, that's when I made my most money. That's when I was in the news all the time. Anytime I put these guys out, I have to give them main event billing. The problem is, you can't build up superstars when you're having pay-per-views every 2 weeks. Everybody fights everybody. And nobody really gets built up. Look at the way it's booked. Who was the last guy who really got built up? And if you say Roman Reigns, you're wrong, because Roman lost a lot too over the last couple of years before he got his title back. And the last time he had the title, he had it for what, a week? 2 weeks? It's one of those things where, I mean, and we can all agree that we're tired of the way Roman gets billed. Roman's always at the top of the card, but Roman lost a lot too. And everybody does. And back in the Attitude Era, it was very rare that Stone Cold took a loss. And what they did with Attitude Era booking was, you had 5 or 6 guys who were the top guys, and they just didn't lose to anybody except each other. And of course, there were fans that complained about certain wrestlers being held down and held back. Most notably, Booker T was one that fans complained was really over. The crowd loved him, and they never gave him a rightful run with the title. And I'm not going to argue with that at all. They even got King Booker over. You can get King Booker over. Yeah, it's stunning what they did with him. But you look at what they're doing now, and you've got so many wrestlers. So many. Like, it is a crazy amount of wrestlers. I look at NXT right now. Tommaso Ciampa is doing fantastic work as the champ down there. Absolutely. Some of the best work I've seen anybody do in a very long time. He is amazing. And Johnny Gargano, his former tag partner, is not far behind. And when they finally pulled the trigger on that heel turn for Johnny Gargano, which has been teased for over a month now, it is going to be epic. But there's still, do you realistically think that if those two guys go up to the main roster, they're going to get booked as legit threats, and that they're going to move their way up? No, there's too many guys. There's just too many wrestlers. WWE, since they got the network, seems to have this opinion of, okay, we can have a main event every 2 weeks. We can have a pay-per-view every 2 weeks. And they're right, because they're not really pay-per-views anymore. They're just events that are on the network. And as long as you have the network for $10 a month, as long as you can afford it where you're at, as long as it's an option where you're at, you can just watch the network. But there's fatigue that sets in because that pay-per-view is 3 hours. Then you got to watch 3 hours of Raw on Monday, 2 hours of SmackDown on Tuesday. And if you like NXT, that's another hour after that. Plus you get the Mae Young Classic. That I forgot. That's another hour. 205 Live. That's another hour. It's too much. And I'm not sure what the solution is. I have thought for a while that maybe they should stop bringing wrestlers up from NXT and just make NXT its own entity. The problem with that is that if NXT is no longer developmental, then you've got to create another developmental league, which will get shown on the network. And then it just turns into a disaster. But when I look at these guys who are in NXT now, and I compare it to NXT when it started out, you could see all of the wrestlers for the most part were kind of green. There were a few guys like Tyler Black who came in and became Seth Rollins. You know, your Shield members who came in as veterans. But for the most part, there was a lot of green wrestlers. And it seems like now there are a lot of veteran wrestlers in NXT. I'm waiting for the Briscoes to show up. I'm waiting for the day that ROH loses the Briscoes to WWE. Because the Briscoes would be perfect for NXT and they're fantastic. They just have to stay away from saying anything offensive on social media for a while. And they're fantastic. And it's strange because, like, for instance, another one in NXT is Adam Cole. Adam Cole is just freaking amazing. So if you move him up, who do you fire? Because this is the other problem. Wrestlers are getting moved up and up and up and up, and WWE really isn't releasing anybody. Used to be after Mania, you'd see a bunch of releases. We didn't really see that this year. And I don't know if it's because they're worried about them going to New Japan or going to ROH or Impact. Maybe All In scared them. I think All In got on their radar, and I think the fact Chris Jericho has decided to work more with New Japan and potentially Impact Wrestling, ROH, I think this scares them. So it may very well be that they're keeping all of these guys under contract because they realize if they actually let go wrestlers who they're not doing enough with, they could accidentally create a very solid competitor for their product. But I would also argue WWE does their best work when they have a competitor, a legit competitor. And All In showed that with enough minds behind it and enough money behind it, independent wrestling can put together a fantastic show that pays wrestlers very well and gets wrestlers a kind of exposure that normally you'd only see with WWE. It's been about 20 years since WCW went out of business, and it shows. It shows that they're the only show in town. It's a lot of wrestlers. It's a lot of wrestling. So while on this channel I've sworn that I'll report on it, and on Sunday I'm going to wrestling here in Abbotsford, and I'm really excited about it. I'm genuinely excited about wrestling in Abbotsford this coming Sunday. I think that the televised product, there's too many wrestlers. Look at it this way. The event that I'm going to here in Abbotsford, there's going to be, what, 7 or 8 matches? So we're going to see maybe 20 wrestlers? That's a lot of guys who don't get on a card, and it's a house show in British Columbia. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the company does to address this in the future, but I have a funny feeling it'll just be more pay-per-views. Because rumor had been that they were going to go to dual-branded shows, so both SmackDown and Raw would be in them, which I don't agree with that either, because now you're burying half of your talent pool. And the rumor had it that it would be a pay-per-view every 2 weeks, which I absolutely, totally don't. That's awful. That's just awful. It's too much. Because in order to watch all of it, in order to follow all of it, you have to be just watching wrestling all week. which is too much. It's too much. I find on this channel that trying to watch all of the football, now that hockey's back, is somewhat exhausting just to try to watch a couple of games on Sunday, because I've been kind of sported out watching hockey all week. And wrestling, and trying to keep up with what's going on with wrestling. It's a lot. It's too much programming. And the biggest problem I have with it, and I'll close with this, is simple. Stop showing us what happened 5 seconds ago every 10 seconds. It's aggravating, annoying, and stupid. It is absolute. Can you imagine if every 5 minutes in a hockey game they showed you every single goal that's happened in the game? Can you imagine if they kept showing you replays every 5 minutes of a goal that just happened? Hey, let's look back at that goal again. Hey, if you just joined us, here's that goal again. Holy crap. And if they're gonna say, well, we're not really a sport, it's sports entertainment. Okay, I can't think of a show that says, hey, let's do a replay of everything that's happened over the last 10 minutes every 5 minutes. It doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. It's aggravating. Hey, look what happened before the break. I know, I was watching. Oh my God, this is taking a minute and a half. Well, if you've got 6 minutes of commercials every 50 minutes, and it feels like 6 minutes of commercials, because you have your commercials, then you have your promos for all the shows that are coming up, your promos to buy wrestling gear, you got Scott Stanford standing there telling you how great all these events are going to be, and all you're thinking is, can we get back to what was going on in the ring? Please? And then they go back to what's going on in the ring, and it's a promo. It's a 10-minute promo, and then they go back to commercial for another 6 minutes. And they wonder why their ratings are in the tank. And why we all love NXT. NXT doesn't do that to us. NXT's nice to us. I can watch an NXT show. I can have it on the PVR. I can watch an NXT show in half an hour and with very little fast forwarding. I can watch Raw in 15 minutes with a lot of fast forwarding. Like, oh, these guys are against each other? I know what's going to happen here. I don't care. And I just fast forward through it. That's a problem. That's a major problem, because you don't see it in sports, and you don't usually see it in entertainment. If you PVR a show, you don't generally fast forward through characters. And if it's a male soap opera, I can kind of understand that. I used to watch soap operas because I spent more time with my mom than I did with my dad. And I actually found that for talking to girls, if you know soap operas, it's a good icebreaker. The problem I had was that they don't generally look at guys who watch soap operas as boyfriend material. Who knew? Anyways, if it's a soap opera, fine, but you know, there were certain characters I might not have liked, and I might have wanted to fast forward through scenes of them, but it didn't impact the whole show, and in some cases, it impacts the whole show with the male soap opera and what happens when we're tired of seeing certain wrestlers on the screen. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Is it too much? Do they saturate it? Is there too much programming? Are there too many wrestlers? Is it just too much at this point? And let me know which product you follow the most. Now that I'm back with the network, I am really digging NXT. Nikki Cross is one of the most entertaining wrestlers in the company. She's fantastic. I had been concerned that when Sanity got moved up, that she might get buried. That hasn't happened. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. Just tapping upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.